Shalom and greetings from Jerusalem, Jane. I just put on my coat. I'm freezing. It's a cold day in Israel, but it's a cold day in my heart and in my soul. And I have been trying to record this video several times, but I had to stop because I couldn't stop crying. um, We are in the midst of the first phase of this hostage deal, and the savages, the modern day Nazis in Hamas, has decided that Saturday is the day to release hostages, because they know it's the holy day for the Jewish people. This is the one day during the week where we shut things off and we rest and we try and just to get a little bit of rest, recover from the whole week that is so busy and so traumatizing. So that's the day they have chosen to release innocent hostages who has been held in brutal Hamas captivity. And then for the price of that, Israel has to release hundreds of wild savages, terrorists who has murdered hundreds of Israelis in the most horrific terror attacks. So today 3 hostages were set for release early in the morning. It's supposed to be male hostages above 50, but also if they are in a dire health state, they are being released if they are below 50. So today three men was being released, and it was a tough one. It was a very, very painful one. Shock waves were going through all of Israel when we saw these precious one coming out of the vehicles, being surrounded by these savages, armed to the teeth, Hamas terrorists, of course cowards as they are, covering their faces. But when we saw these 3 men, all fathers, after 491 days in brutal captivity, being used and abused, going through living in the most inhumane conditions, when we saw them today, my heart just dropped to the floor. They were so skinny and frail, and they were surrounded by 2 terrorists who was holding them like they were too weak to walk on their own. And then they were being pulled up on that big stage like we see every week with big banners. And this time, they were forced to speak. We haven't seen that before with the hostages that has been released. But they were being interviewed by one of these vile terrorists, speaking about, and of course they have been instructed and forced to say these things, criticizing the Israeli government and praising Hamas for good treatment. So this sick, evil, diabolical warfare and torture of our hostages coming out, being so slim that I read they have lost up to 30% of their body weight, completely malnourished, being forced on a stage to praise Hamas as the final humiliations of these hostages. One of them was kidnapped in his underwear and dragged barefooted into Gaza. So after this horrific show, a Hamas propaganda show, they were being pulled into the Uber drivers of the Red Cross, the failing, deplorable Red Cross, who has done nothing at all to visit our hostages or bringing in medicine. And then they were taking in to the hands of the IDF, and then they came into Israel and they met their families. One of the hostages was kidnapped with his wife, and she was released in the hostage deal in November of 2023. The other hostage was, one of them was at the Nova Music Festival with his wife when he was kidnapped, and she was murdered on that day, and he did not know. He thought he was coming home to meet his wife, and then he was told that she was brutally murdered on that day, and only days later actually did they find her body. The last hostage also came home. You can barely recognize him. That's how skinny he is. And he was looking forward to meeting his wife and his 2 teenage daughters just for his mother and his sister, according to Israeli media, those were the ones who had to tell him today, when he was looking for his family, his wife and his girls, that they were brutally murdered in the October 7 massacre. So it's a difficult day. It's a very, very painful and difficult day here in Israel. They have been severely starved. I mean, no food. These are war crimes. This is crimes against humanity. If not the failing United Nations, the leader of the United Nations and the Red Cross and your government is out speaking about this in outrage, this is crime against humanity, what we saw happen to our 3 hostages, the way they looked when they were being released today. So very, very difficult. And in the midst of seeing them coming home in that condition, we have to watch nearly 190 Arab security prisoners being released today. Many of them who are cold-blooded terrorists who have murdered many Israeli civilians in the most horrific terror attacks. That's the price. Those are the ones that has to be released today for our innocent civilians who was kidnapped at a music festival, kidnapped in their home, dragged into being starved and tortured in Gaza for more than a year. Israel has to release nearly 190 security prisoners, many of them cold-blooded terrorists. That's the price Israel is paying. Of course, also letting in a lot more aid. So while our hostages are being starved, nearly starved to death, more than 13,000 trucks has come into the Gaza Strip just in this little brief time of this hostage ceasefire deal. It's just, I can't find the words. So like I said, I wept today when I saw the condition of these hostages. I was on the phone with a prayer partner and a good friend of mine in America when one of them came up on TV and we saw him at his family, and I just wept. Bring home all the hostages, and then the IDF, you go in and you eradicate and you eliminate and you wipe every single demonic Hamas Islamic Jihad terrorist off the face of this earth. These modern day Nazis, who are modern day Nazis, who have the same goal, and that is the complete elimination of the Jewish people. And that's what we are seeing now. So it's time for the world to wake up and find their moral compass and stand with Israel. And shame on you, every single nasty person who has been demonstrating in the streets pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas. Shame on you when you saw how they are nearly starving our hostages to death, while Israel is pouring and allowing thousands of trucks into the Gaza Strip, which is feeding Hamas and empowering Hamas. So keep these hostages in your prayers. They are going to have to go through a very, very long recovery process now, physically, mentally, emotionally, their families also. And while we still have so many hostages, dead and alive, left behind back in the Gaza Strip, bring them home and then eradicate all of these terrorists. United, we stand with Israel. Bye.